They sold her for being too large, until the cowboy lifted her and said, "The auction block." The sun burned high over the small frontier town of Red Butte, the kind of sun that drew every bit of mercy out of the dust and left people dry, tired, and mean. The clapboard buildings looked bleached, weather-beaten, and tired, much like the folks who shuffled through its single street. But today the town was more crowded than usual. Wagons rolled in, horses tied up, and men leaned against posts, eager for the spectacle. An auction was always good entertainment. Cattle, tools, or sometimes even people. Clara May stood on the wooden block at the edge of the square, her face pale but her chin held high. She was not a frail girl, nor the kind that disappeared in a crowd. She was tall, with broad shoulders, wide hips, and strength carved into her frame from years of hard labor on her stepfather's failing farm. Where others saw size, she knew it was her body's testament to endurance. But in this cruel town, that was exactly why she stood on the block now. "She's too big," her stepfather spat as he nudged her forward earlier that morning, his words cutting as sharp as barbed wire. "Eats too much, takes up too much space, and no man in his right mind would want her. Best we get something for her before she's more trouble." The auctioneer, a thin man with a loud voice, paced before the crowd. "Now what we've got here is a strong young woman, good for farm work, good for heavy lifting, and sturdy. Built to last, you might say." Laughter rippled through the men gathered. Some smirked, others sneered, a few elbowed their neighbors. Clara kept her eyes on the horizon. If she let herself look at their faces, she might crumble. And Clara May refused to cry. "Not here. Not for them." "Who'll start the bidding?" the auctioneer called. $5. "For." "She's worth her weight in good work, I guarantee it." But the crowd shifted uneasily. Some men chuckled under their breath. "She's too big to marry," one muttered. "Wouldn't fit in my wagon," another joked. "Looks like she'd break the bedstead." Laughter again, cruel and sharp. Clara's chest burned. Each word landed like a whip, but she stood straighter. If they thought they'd shame her, they'd be wrong. She had spent too many years carrying water barrels, chopping wood, and facing storms alone to let a pack of cowards break her spirit. Still, beneath her hard gaze, her heart throbbed with the sting of rejection. All she had ever wanted was to belong somewhere, to be seen as more than a burden. The auctioneer's voice faltered. "No one. Not a soul." And then, out of the crowd, a voice. "I'll take her." The words rolled calm, steady, and low like distant thunder. The crowd parted slightly as a man stepped forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his hat tipped low against the sun. His shirt was worn but clean, his boots dusted from miles of trail. There was nothing hurried about him. He moved like a man who knew his place in the world and needed no approval from others. It was Jedediah Cole, known to some as Jed, the cowboy who kept mostly to himself. He had land a few miles out, horses he broke with his own hands, and a reputation for speaking little but meaning every word he said. The auctioneer blinked. "You'll take her?" $10, then." Jed's eyes flicked once to Clara, holding her gaze. Unlike the others, his expression held no mockery, no hesitation. Only a steady weight, like a man measuring truth. $10, he said, dropping the coins heavy into the auctioneer's palm. "She's mine now." Gasps and whispers rippled through the square. "What's he want with her? Jed must be crazy, big as she is." Clara felt her knees weaken. Not from fear, but from the shock of being chosen, claimed, when she had expected nothing but rejection. The auctioneer smirked, eager to be done. "All right, then. She's yours." Jed stepped forward and, without a word, lifted Clara down from the block. His arms wrapped around her waist, steady and strong, as though her weight was nothing at all. Clara's breath caught. She had never been lifted, never been held like she was worth holding. He set her gently on the ground, his eyes meeting hers again. In that hushed moment, his voice rumbled low and sure. "You're just right for my arms." The crowd's laughter faded to a hush, some staring, some shaking their heads, but Jed paid them no mind. He tipped his hat slightly to Clara, as though the world around them did not matter. For the first time in years, Clara's heart swelled with something fierce and dangerous, hope. Jed turned to her stepfather, who was still gaping. "She won't be your burden any more." His voice was quiet, but it carried. "And you'll not speak of her like she's less than a woman again." Her stepfather sputtered but said nothing. The weight of Jed's steady glare left him small, withered, and silent. Clara followed Jed to his horse, her heart pounding, her mind spinning. She didn't know this man, didn't know why he had chosen her. But when he helped her onto the saddle and swung up behind her, his arms steady around her, she felt, for the first time, that she wasn't too much. She was exactly enough. As they rode out of Red Butte, Clara looked back once at the town, the place that had mocked her, discarded her. Then she turned forward, toward the wide prairie and the cowboy who had spoken words she thought she'd never hear. "You're just right for my arms." And in her heart, a fragile flame flickered to life. A home in his heart. The prairie stretched wide before them, endless grass swaying like a sea under the late afternoon sun. Clara rode in silence, her hands gripping the worn leather of the saddle as Jed's horse carried them away from Red Butte. She could feel the steady strength of Jed behind her, his arm occasionally brushing hers as he guided the reins. She dared not speak, afraid that if she broke the quiet, the moment might vanish. That he might change his mind, decide she was too much trouble after all. But Jed was a man who didn't waste words. When he spoke, it was with purpose. "You ever worked cattle?" he asked after a long stretch of silence. Clara blinked, startled. I've driven them from pasture to pasture. Fed them, mended fences, branded calves." Her voice was steady, though inside she feared it might not be enough. Jed gave a small nod. "Good. You'll fit right in, then." Her throat tightened. Fit right in. No one had ever said that to her before. They reached his ranch by sundown. It wasn't grand, a weathered house with a porch, a barn, corrals, and a wide stretch of land rolling into the distance. But it was sturdy, solid, alive. "This is home," Jed said simply, dismounting and helping her down. Clara's boots touched the earth, and she looked at the house, the barn, the corral where horses shifted and snorted. She had dreamed of belonging somewhere, anywhere, and now she stood on the threshold of something that felt achingly close. "Why me?" she asked before she could stop herself. The question spilled out, raw and trembling. "Why would you take me when no one else would?" Jed met her gaze, his eyes steady beneath the brim of his hat. "Because I don't see what they see. They look and only notice size. I look and see strength. I see a woman who won't break when the world gets hard. That's worth more than all their foolish talk." Her chest tightened, tears burning at the corners of her eyes. She turned away quickly, not wanting to seem weak, but Jed's hand was gentle as it brushed her cheek. "You've been told you're too much," he said softly. "But to me, you're just right. You're exactly what I've been waiting for." The days that followed were filled with work, but also something Clara had never known before, companionship. She rose early with Jed, helping with the horses, learning the rhythm of his ranch. She cooked meals in the small kitchen, laughing when Jed admitted he'd mostly survived on beans and jerky before she came. She mended his shirts by the firelight, and in return he taught her how to rope calves and ride with more skill than she'd ever imagined. Every evening, when the sun dipped low and painted the land in gold, Jed would sit beside her on the porch. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't. His quiet presence was enough. Yet Clara's heart carried doubts. Too often she remembered the mocking voices at the auction, the cruel laughter of men who saw her as nothing but a burden. Late at night, when Jed had gone to bed, she would stand at the mirror, her hands brushing over her broad shoulders and wide frame, and wonder if Jed truly meant the things he said. One evening, after a long day of branding cattle, Clara finally asked, "You don't regret it? Buying me that day?" Jed turned to her slowly, his gaze unwavering. He reached out, taking her hand into his calloused palm. "I didn't buy you, Clara. I saved you. And I'd do it again, 1,000 times over. You're not here because you're mine like a possession. You're here because you're the woman I want by my side." Her breath caught. He drew her closer, his voice low, meant only for her. "You're perfect for my arms. And more than that, you're perfect for my life." Tears slipped free, but this time Clara didn't turn away. She let herself be held, let herself believe that the cruel words of her past no longer had power. In Jed's arms, she wasn't too much. She wasn't a burden. She was exactly where she belonged. Seasons turned. Clara grew into her place on the ranch, her laughter filling the quiet spaces, her strength matching Jed's stride for stride. Together they faced storms, wild cattle, and the long, lonely nights of the frontier. But never again did she feel unwanted. For every time doubt whispered, Jed's steady voice answered with truth. And so it was that the woman once sold for being too large became the heart of a cowboy's home, the fire that warmed his nights, and the strength beside him when the world turned hard. She had been cast aside, mocked, and discarded. Yet in the arms of one man who saw her worth, Clara found not only love, but freedom. And every time Jed held her close, his voice would remind her, "You're perfect for my arms."